Welcome back. It's Dr. Jen Ferboni, better known as DocJenFit, a doctor of physical therapy. And I want to go over what you can do for hip labral issues. This is super common. And we actually have a podcast that goes into way more detail about why the labrum gets messed up, what exactly is the labrum, and what you can really start doing about it. So we're going to have other exercises just based on research and recommendations in that podcast episode. So I highly recommend going and checking out that one if you know that you have a labral issue or you suspect that you do. Now, I really want to go over from the basics, what you should be adding in, and just 4 basic things that you can really be doing to add in, whether it's into your workouts, into your recovery days, whatever it may be, that is really going to help and benefit your current range of motion and your current pain levels. Now, first and foremost, before we even talk about increasing range of motion, you just want to make sure that you are stabilized and controlled within the range of motion you currently have available. And one of my favorite ways to do that is in a quadruped hip circle. Okay. So I'm going to go to all fours here. And what you want to be thinking when we're here is that we're not going to have the spine move. So we really want the hip to be doing the most range of motion and the most work here. So you want to think of pressing your fingertips into the ground to automatically kind of lock up that upper spine, and then kind of rotate your hips back and forth until you find like whatever middle position kind of feels like for you. And you're going to think of just holding this position. You're still going to breathe, but you think of stabilizing a little bit more through your trunk. Now I want to lift just one of my knees, hover it off the ground, and I'm going to think of hugging it into my chest without rounding into my spine. So again, my spine is not going to move anywhere. It's going to stay in that same spot. And how much range of motion can I come up without moving that tailbone under or that pelvis? And then take it out to the side as much as possible. Start to lift, lift, lift. You're going to feel that glute start to activate. And then once you can't anymore, you're going to start to rotate that leg to the ceiling. So rotating my heel toward the ceiling, squeezing in my glute. Again, not dropping in that pelvis or that low back. So keep it stable. Sometimes doing this in front of a mirror is really helpful to see what is going on with that spine. Hold it right there. You should feel that hamstring and glute on fire. Nothing is happening in the low back because it is all coming from the hip, and then let it down nice and slow. Then you'll reverse it. Lift from that heel, squeeze that glute really as high as you can, as high as you can. You should feel a little shaky, and then it's going to start to move out to the side. This is how slow you're going. Rotate that knee like it's lifting above a cone. Lift it up, 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 and then start to bring it in again without rounding in the spine. And that was one. That was one side, one rep, going forward and going backward the opposite way. The goal is to do 3 total, forward and back on each side. And you really want to go slow and controlled. Make sure that you're feeling for any pain. If you have any pain, you want to back off that range of motion a little bit. If you're noticing that your back is moving, you want to reduce that range of motion a little bit. Okay. So it's all about starting to find what your current range of motion and how much you can control within what you have available right now. That's really going to help to grease that hip and start to open and activate different things. Now we really want to make sure that we have some hip control coming from the pelvis and the inner core. Our inner core is made up of our diaphragm, our pelvic floor, our transverse abdominis, and even into our low back called our multifidi. So we want to get all of these muscles kind of starting to work together and the core stabilized. So I'm going to lay on my back, and we're going to look at how can I get that inner core to activate prior to my hip flexor doing the most. This hip flexor from your quad, from all the way up into your low back, this is usually what kicks on most. And what ends up happening if I'm just moving my hip back and forth, not thinking of anything, is you see my pelvis start to move as well, and my low back. Because again, my hip flexor from this leg is going to go all the way into my low spine. So if I'm not controlling from my inner core at all, I'm going to have a lot of movement from my low back and from my pelvis. But if I can first stabilize from that inner core, then move from that hip flexor, I help so I'm not putting all the tension and pressure on the front of my hip. I'm balancing it a bit more with that inner core support. So starting to learn how to do that, we want to think of the breath because again, the diaphragm, this respiratory diaphragm is our first top portion of that inner core. So starting to get better at breathing from this low rib cage, you want to take a deep breath in here. As you breathe out, that rib cage is slowly going to start to drop as you think of lifting a blueberry up and into the vagina. That is going to help to contract that pelvic floor. Okay. It doesn't have to be a max contraction. It's just starting to get the idea of elevating that pelvic floor to meet the rib cage. You're not dropping and forcing the rib cage. You're not forcing the low back into the ground. The goal here is not to have the pelvis or low back move at all. So we take a deep breath in from the sides. We breathe out. And now can you hold that and still breathe? Breathing in and stabilizing. Again, my pelvis isn't moving. My low back isn't pressed against the floor. I am just thinking of stabilizing where my body is in neutral. Now, holding it from here, can I hold this? With a breath out, think of just lifting this leg up to horizontal. Breathe in, slowly put it back down. Breathe in, lift it up. Breathe in, put it back down. So we're going to use the exhale on each exertion. Exertion lifting the leg up, exertion lifting the leg down. What that does, as I breathe out, I automatically help to contract my diaphragm, pull my pelvic floor up and in. And so I help to contract these two inner core muscles down and together, get my transverse abdominis on prior to my hip flexor taking over. So if I can start to get good at this action, which again, this takes a while. This is a very basic introduction on how to do that. But if you can start here and start to reprogram this in, then we can start to use it in bigger movement patterns. Okay. Squats, deadlifts, loading your body a little bit more. And if you want a little bit more direction on this, we have a whole core plan on Gen Health, which goes into the core in a lot more detail. So you can check that out. You can start a week free. Just go to gen.health/free trial and then select core and you can see the core plan. Now we want to think of activating the hips. And one of my favorite ways to start to get that activation is from getting extension with abduction. So moving the legs further apart. This is going to help to turn on all of my glute muscles, have them work together, and then stabilize my hip into that extension where I want it to go without my low back taking over. And though I like that the banded loops. So those little therapy banded loops, we have them a part of our optimal body therapy kit. We also have this long one. And I love this long one that we're going to use for the side plank clams. So you're going to take this band, you wrap it around one foot, and then you wrap it around the other foot. Okay. And then from here, I'm going to go into a side plank. Bring that elbow underneath you more than you would think. Think of the band pressing into your feet as we lift into a plank, pressing into those feet. And then you're also going to lift and pull those legs apart as much as possible. So you come down into just a relaxed position and then lifting from those hips. They stack right on top of each other. You squeeze your glutes and you pull those legs apart. So this is a great kind of activation exercise of where is that hip range of motion? How do I get those glutes to activate without putting your hips in too much of a compromised range of motion that might cause pain at the hips if you're currently having pain. So especially if you want to keep working out, just doing 10 to 15 of these on each side, really thinking of lifting, squeezing the glutes, going into as much extension and pulling those knees apart as possible is going to help prepare the mind and body connection for any exercise that you might do that you really want to stimulate that activity around your glutes and help protect that hip joint a bit more. So that is one that you want to add in. The next one that you don't want to miss out on are step ups. Now I'm going to use this as my step up. It is quite high though. So especially if you're having hip pain, you probably are going to want to start lower. Maybe it's a step stool even, maybe it's a stair, or maybe you're going to the second stair, but you want to start at a level that's comfortable for you. This is what you want to check. Can I comfortably lift my leg? Again, without my low back going into play here, can I, with my hip down, with my back straight, lift and hold? You want to make sure that you have good range of motion here prior to stepping up, or else we're just compensating. Okay. The reason I love step ups, we're going to load the glutes so much here. And this is going to help to build that lower body strength so much in a nice controlled manner. So what you want to look for in a step up first is where are you shifting into? So as you lean forward, we want to make sure that that knee is not coming on the inside of your big toe. So I want to almost think of this front hip pulling back, because as I lean forward and I keep my hip back, you'll notice that my knee naturally goes over my second, third toe without really having to force it. Okay. So this is really good. The other thing you want to make sure is that as you lean forward, you're not lifting in your heel. Okay. So we want full foot contact here as we go into the step up. So my hip is back. I'm going to lean forward, full foot force, and then I'm going to start to press through my leg, coming all the way up into that opposite leg to switch so that I get into that full extension. And then the most important part here is that you go slow. So reach with that opposite hand, go slow, 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 hip back, all the way down. How slow can you slow it down on those step ups? It might be really annoying for the person if they're waiting for a bench from you, but you know that you're optimizing your hip strength by working on that control on the way down. Okay. That's really where we're going to build that resilience in the body. So adding step ups in this controlled manner, making sure that we're activating around the hip, getting that full control of the range of motion and working that inner core, they all play a role in how you're improving in your hip to stay out of pain and keep moving. That's what's most important. We want to keep you moving. So if you need a little more help and assistance on what to do to help improve your mobility, your core control, and your strength, you can always check out the hip plan that we have available on Gen Health. Don't forget, if you love what you're learning, I have so much more in stock for you. So hit that subscribe button, check out the other videos I've done in the past, and leave any comments of any suggestions that you have for videos in the future. And I can't wait to help you feel incredible and amazing within your body.